Michael Okafor never expected to receive an invitation to the wedding of the woman who once shattered his heart. Cynthia had abandoned him for a richer man, claiming he wasn't ambitious enough. Now, years later, he was a self-made millionaire, more successful than she ever imagined. But instead of ignoring the insult, he decided to attend, with a date no one would see coming. A homeless woman, Amaka. What started as a simple act of defiance would turn into a night no one would ever forget. Because when Amaka stepped into that wedding, she didn't just turn heads, she changed everything. The wedding venue was nothing short of a dream. Chandeliers glittered above a sea of white roses and golden drapes. The air smelled of imported perfumes, and every table was dressed in elegance, crystal glasses, expensive cutlery, and custom name cards for guests from Lagos's highest social circles. Laughter echoed through the marble hall, waiters in tuxedos glided around with trays of champagne, and soft live jazz played in the background, elevating the already luxurious atmosphere. It was the kind of wedding that made headlines, the kind people boasted about attending for years. Cynthia stood at the center of it all, basking in the glow of attention. Her custom-made designer gown hugged her figure perfectly, the Swarovski crystals shimmering under the spotlight. Her makeup was flawless, her smile even more so. This was her day, her statement to the world. Her new husband, Chief Econem, a prominent oil magnate in his late 50s, stood beside her like a badge of wealth and achievement. She scanned the crowd, soaking in the admiration and envy. Her past was behind her. She had won. Then the atmosphere shifted. A sudden hush rolled through the room like a silent ripple disturbing the surface of calm water. Heads turned, eyes widened, cameras subtly adjusted their angles, even the music seemed to fade into the background. Cynthia followed the direction of the growing whispers, her smile faltering slightly as she turned to look toward the entrance. Michael. He stood at the doorway, tall and striking in a tailored tuxedo that looked like it was stitched straight from power and wealth. His wristwatch flashed under the lights, his expression calm and unreadable. But it wasn't just Michael that stole the show. It was the woman beside him. Amaka looked like a vision, gone were the tattered clothes, the weariness, the uncertainty. In their place stood a radiant woman, dressed in a floor-length emerald gown that hugged her body with elegance. Her natural hair was styled in a sleek bun, her skin glowing, and her makeup done with perfect finesse. She walked with poise, like she'd been born to be there, her eyes taking in the room without flinching. They moved in sync, effortlessly commanding attention with every step. Guests leaned in to whisper behind manicured hands. Some recognized Michael and were shocked to see him after so long. Others focused on Amaka, wondering where he had been hiding such a stunning woman. Cynthia's heart began to race. Her perfectly rehearsed smile froze in place, her fingers tightening slightly around the stem of her champagne glass. She hadn't seen Michael in years. The last she heard, he was running a startup that hadn't taken off yet. Now here he was, walking into her wedding with the confidence of a king and a woman who looked like royalty. Her mind raced with questions. Was this planned? Was he trying to embarrass her? Who was the woman? Chief Econem noticed the tension in her posture and leaned in to whisper something, but Cynthia barely heard him. Her attention was locked on Michael and Amaka as they made their way further into the hall. The guests began to part like the Red Sea, their stares lingering far too long for Cynthia's comfort. Michael nodded politely at a few familiar faces, his demeanor relaxed yet calculated. Amaka didn't speak, but her eyes did all the work. Calm, confident, unapologetic. She wasn't intimidated by the glitz, the money, or the stares. She belonged there, and everyone could feel it. Cynthia's maid of honor leaned toward her and whispered, "Who's that with him?" Cynthia forced a soft laugh. "I have no idea," she replied, but her voice was thin and the laugh didn't reach her eyes. As the photographer turned his lens from the couple at the altar to the newly arrived duo, Cynthia realized something she hadn't anticipated. Not everyone was here to celebrate her. Some had just found a new highlight for the evening. The bride was no longer the center of attention, and the night had only just begun. The moment Michael and Amaka settled into their seats, the room buzzed with murmurs. Guests leaned toward one another, whispering furiously behind fans and wine glasses, throwing curious glances in their direction. Who was she? Was she a Nollywood actress? A foreign investor's daughter? Or perhaps the long-lost child of a wealthy family? Her confidence, her gown, the grace in her steps, everything about her screamed prestige, but nobody could place her. Michael, on the other hand, appeared completely at ease. He chatted casually with the couple seated beside him, occasionally smiling but offering nothing that revealed Amaka's identity. His calmness only deepened the intrigue. The more questions people asked, the fewer answers they had. He never looked Cynthia's way, not even once. His deliberate avoidance sent a stronger message than direct eye contact ever could. Amaka, meanwhile, maintained a subtle smile. She didn't fidget or scan the room nervously. She knew she was being watched. She could feel the weight of their eyes on her, feel the sharp comparisons being made between her and Cynthia. Yet, she sat straight, her shoulders back, her chin slightly raised, not arrogantly, but like someone who had nothing to prove. It was clear to anyone watching, she wasn't here to compete. She already knew her worth. Cynthia's facade was cracking. She kept smiling, nodding at guests, pretending nothing had changed, but her eyes kept flickering toward Michael's table. Every time someone approached them to greet Michael or throw a compliment at Amaka's appearance, her heart tightened. The attention was supposed to be on her. She had planned everything to perfection. Her dress, the music, the food, the guest list. It was all curated to showcase her success and joy. And yet the whispers weren't about her wedding anymore. Her fingers tapped against her champagne glass. The photographer who had been snapping endless photos of her earlier was now orbiting Michael and Amaka, trying to capture every angle. Cynthia's new husband, Chief Econom, picked up on the shift too. His brows furrowed slightly as he followed her gaze and noticed how the spotlight had tilted. He leaned in, lowering his voice. "Do you know them?" Cynthia forced a laugh, shaking her head. "Just an old friend. He used to be a small-time tech guy I knew years ago." Chief Econom nodded, though his expression remained stiff. "Funny. Everyone's staring at him like he owns the place." Cynthia clenched her jaw but said nothing. She knew exactly who Michael had become, and seeing him now more refined, more powerful, and with a woman who radiated effortless class, made it harder to breathe. The wedding was continuing on the surface. Dancers twirled, the MC cracked jokes, and waiters kept the champagne flowing. But underneath it all, the atmosphere had shifted. The bride was no longer the star of the show, and the real surprise was yet to come. Cynthia couldn't take it anymore. Every laugh from Michael's corner, every camera flash in Amaka's direction chipped away at the confidence she had walked in with. She had to regain control of the room. Straightening her shoulders, she excused herself from a conversation and made her way toward their table, plastering a radiant smile on her face like it hadn't faltered all evening. "Michael," she said sweetly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "I didn't expect to see you here. I'm so glad you came." Michael stood slowly, his face unreadable. "Congratulations, Cynthia," he said with a nod, his voice smooth, polite, and distant. Cynthia turned to Amaka, eyes scanning her from head to toe. "And who is this beautiful lady? You've been hiding her, haven't you?" Before Michael could respond, Amaka rose with effortless poise. "I'm Amaka," she said simply, her voice calm and clear. She extended her hand with the quiet confidence of someone who had shaken the hands of presidents. Michael added, "Amaka is a close friend. She's been through a lot, but she carries herself like a queen." Cynthia forced a chuckle. "Oh, that's lovely. Well, I'm happy to see you've moved on too. Life has a funny way of working out, doesn't it?" She waved her diamond-studded fingers slightly, just enough to flash her wedding ring. Michael only smiled. "It really does." Amaka offered a small nod, but didn't engage further. She didn't fawn, didn't gloat, didn't try to impress. Her silence, her stillness, was more powerful than any dramatic reaction could have been. Cynthia was waiting for a hint of envy, a crack in the facade, but it never came. Instead, she felt like the one being evaluated. Her carefully rehearsed lines fell flat. Her dress, once the envy of the room, now felt like a costume. Amaka didn't try to shine, she just did. The contrast was undeniable. Cynthia realized that no matter how much she tried to flaunt her upgrade, she was still chasing validation. But Amaka, she wasn't chasing anything. And in that moment, Cynthia understood. She hadn't just lost Michael. She had lost the silent war of presence. As the reception moved into speeches and goodwill messages, the MC cheerfully began calling on friends and family to say a few words to the couple. One by one, guests stepped up, offering light-hearted jokes, blessings, and memories of the bride and groom. Laughter echoed around the hall, the clinking of wine glasses blending with soft music. Then, just as the MC was about to call the next person, Amaka stood up. Heads turned. With quiet confidence, she walked toward the stage. The MC, slightly confused but too polite to stop her, handed her the microphone. Amaka looked around the room, her eyes calm, her voice steady. "Good evening, everyone. I know most of you don't know me, and that's okay. My name is Amaka. I came here today not to take attention but to show appreciation. Because the man beside me, Michael, reminded me of who I truly am." She paused, the hall now silent. "I was once part of this world. My father was a prominent businessman. I had everything: education, privilege, opportunity. But betrayal, from those closest to me, stripped it all away. I found myself on the streets not because I was lazy or foolish, but because life is unpredictable. People turned their backs. I became invisible." Her voice didn't waver. But then Michael saw me, not as a beggar, not as a burden. He reminded me that I was still worthy, still valuable. And tonight, standing here, I'm not just someone he brought to a wedding. I'm someone rediscovering herself. Gasps echoed across the hall. No one moved. Cynthia froze, her champagne glass trembling in her grip. Amaka smiled softly and returned the mic. The silence lingered, thick, heavy, filled with shock. No one had expected that. Cynthia stood frozen, her smile faltering as the applause meant for her slowly shifted toward Amaka. The hall buzzed, not with excitement for the bride, but with stunned admiration for the woman who had just owned the stage without trying to steal it. Guests whispered among themselves, heads turning again and again to catch another glance at Amaka, their interest no longer on Cynthia's designer gown or sparkling ring. She clenched her jaw, trying to hold her composure. This was supposed to be her perfect day, the grand wedding that would cement her status and silence all her past. Yet somehow the woman she hadn't even noticed when she first entered had become the center of attention. Michael sat calmly at his table, sipping from a glass of wine, his gaze neutral. He didn't gloat, he didn't smirk, but the message was loud and clear. He had moved on, not just with another woman, but with someone who exuded quiet strength, someone with a story deeper than expensive lace and diamonds. Cynthia's new husband leaned over and whispered something to her, but she didn't hear it. Her thoughts were spinning. She could feel the pity in some of the stares, the curiosity in others. The joy she had felt walking down the aisle was replaced by the sinking realization that her thunder had been completely stolen. No one asked about her dress again. No one wanted selfies with the bride. All eyes were on the woman who came in from nowhere and still managed to own the room. And just like that, Cynthia's perfect day began to unravel, bit by bit, smile by forced smile. Just as the atmosphere began to settle, the MC moved to continue with the evening's program. But Michael rose from his seat, calmly, with the same quiet confidence that had defined him all evening. He walked toward the stage. The hall murmured again. Some guests leaned forward in their seats, others reached for their phones. sensing something was about to happen. He took the microphone, glanced at Amaka with a reassuring nod, then turned to face the room. "I know this is not my event," he began, his voice even, "but since I've been invited, and since so many of you have questions burning in your minds about the woman beside me, I think it's only fair I share something." Cynthia stiffened, her eyes narrowing. "Amaka is not just someone I picked up and polished for show. She's someone I admire, someone I believe in. And in just a short time, she's shown me more honesty, courage and strength than I've seen in a lifetime." People exchanged glances. Even the waiters paused. Michael took a breath, then smiled faintly. "I didn't come here to show off. I came here with intention, because I believe in moments that change everything. So I'll make this one count." He turned slightly toward Amaka and extended his hand. "Amaka, would you consider building a future with me?" A collective gasp tore through the hall. Cameras flashed instantly. Guests stood from their chairs. Cynthia's jaw dropped, frozen in disbelief. The entire wedding stopped. Eyes darted between Michael and Amaka, waiting. The bride, now forgotten, stood motionless as the scene played out, completely powerless. And in that instant, the celebration turned into the most unforgettable spectacle Lagos high society had ever witnessed. Amaka stared at Michael, stunned. The microphone hung in his hand, his questions still hanging heavy in the air. Gasps echoed throughout the hall as guests waited with bated breath, their eyes glued to the pair at the center of the drama. Cynthia's face was pale, her mouth slightly open, unable to process what had just happened. Her grip on her bouquet tightened, knuckles white, as her big day unraveled completely before her. Amaka's eyes darted around the room, landing on Cynthia, on the guests with their phones raised, and finally back to Michael. She opened her mouth slightly, but no words came out yet. The crowd was dead silent now, waiting for her answer, for any sign of what would happen next. Cameras continued to flash, recording what had quickly become a historic moment in Lagos social circles. The MC stood frozen in the background, unsure whether to intervene or let the scene unfold. Michael didn't rush her. He held her gaze, calm, patient, letting her know with his eyes that whatever choice she made, he would respect it. The tension in the air was so thick, even the music had faded into the background. And then, just as Amaka took a step toward him, the screen cut to black. A soft, suspenseful piano note echoed, followed by a dramatic text that slowly faded in across the screen. "What she says next will change everything." Another beat of silence, then a final teaser line appeared. "You won't believe what happens in part 3. The music swelled as the screen faded out completely, leaving viewers hanging on the edge of their seats, desperate to know what Amaka's answer would be. And what would happen next?